On this Ask Dan Schneider, I will be answering a question from Gandy47. That's Gandy47. He asked me, why did I have to mention the death of Bob Grumman in a prior Ask Dan Schneider? And he goes on, he just talks a little bit that I was sort of like kicking dirt on a dead man or something like that. Well, I had a similar reaction to when I had written an obituary about a woman I knew many years ago called Maggie Estep. People thought that I was somehow dissing her by saying that her life was not hunky-dory and she didn't accomplish what she had accomplished. And a lot of the people who had written about her were basically phonies, just hopping on her bandwagon, such as it was. With Bob Grumman, the thing was, I was just expressing what had happened between us and the fact that the man had seemingly been jealous or envious of me for many years. So I decided when I got this email that I should basically just go into a little bit deeper about this stuff. Back when I started Cosmoetica, I used to put the emails I got from people about the website online. And this got me into some trouble, not legal or ethical trouble, but I did get some people who threatened me with death threats and violence. I got some people who threatened me with lawsuits for publishing their emails or some things they said about other people. Some people claimed that I had said things that were untrue about them, which was absolutely false. But a lot of these people, had problems. They had done some things that were borderline criminal. Others had personal traits, addictions and whatnot that they didn't want known. Another person who I'd known many years ago didn't even like me telling the truth, admitted truth that he had had a childhood disease. So with these constant threats, I did take a few things down. I've had to alter very little about Cosmoetic in that manner, but it's always frustrating because the things I said were the truth. But we live in a society where truth is not valued. We live in a society where if you are rich, you can threaten people with lawsuits just to get them to, say something that's untrue. If you were to, or if I was to, let's say, write something about Bill Gates and I only had 95% of proof, Bill Gates could take me to court, and despite the fact that he actually did whatever it is that I might have claimed about him, he could win. And in the U.S., it's more difficult for most for people to do that. In other countries, it's easier. Libel, for example, is something that you have to show that what the person said is untrue, that it did damage to someone's reputation, and that the person who claimed it knew that it was untrue at the time. I've never ever met those three standards. All the things that I have said have been true. There have been times when I haven't been able to prove it, though. And that's the thing, is in this country, truth is not the thing that the courts seek out, but provable things need to have proof. So if I said that someone was a pedophile, even if I had seen them, if I didn't have any exterior proof of them, and if the child who had been raped or abused didn't want to stand up and claim that against the person, I could be sued for libel. This goes back to stuff like with Oscar Wilde when he won some stuff, or more recently when someone who was guilty of something, Lance Armstrong, the biker who doped himself and won 7 Tours de France, falsely sued other people for libel and won. And now when he admitted that his lawsuits had been false, he's now been sued and has had to pay off millions of dollars, even though he's still a millionaire and his lies made him rich, even with the stuff he's had to repair other people with. But again, liars are rewarded in this society. Telling the truth isn't. Nonetheless, so as it refers to Bob Grumman had found Cosmoetica within probably a year of its going online in '01, at the latest maybe spring or summer of 2002. And for the next 3 or 4 years, he just emailed me sometimes daily, then it got to weekly, then monthly, and then it just sort of faded away. I think he had found Cosmoetica by submitting some stuff to me, and I was like, this is ridiculous, this is garbage, and I denuded his obviously, I won't even say obviously bad poetry, just because it wasn't really even poetry. He may have been sent to me by some other bad writers. There was a guy named Blackjack Foley who had who was involved in poetry, something on the West Coast in San Francisco. He's the guy who sent me a guy named Carlo Parcelli, another guy who apparently became obsessed with me as the years went on, and started lying about me in print that he had never sent stuff to me when he had sent poems to me that, just like Grumman, I had rejected. But getting back to Bob Grumman was 24 years older than me to the day, apparently, February 2nd, 1941 versus my 1965. And the very fact that Cosmoetica, even back then, had been getting millions of hits and now has gotten close to 500 million visitors and billions of hits, seemed to irk him, because he wrote these blogs where he had these Byzantine theories that were so obviously untrue. His writing was so bad, his thought processes were so bad, and yet he sort of obsessed over it. And, you know, at the time, this was long before YouTube, this was long before, you know, blogs. It was not long before blogs, but before most blogs became big. It was before you had Gmail and things where you could save emails all the time. So in those first few years Cosmoetica was online, I think I had emails with AT&T and US Family Net and Great Barrier Reef and a couple of other companies. And instead of virtually unlimited storage space, I only had, you know, something like maybe half a, what was it, gigabyte would it be, I guess? Not even half a gigabyte, maybe only like 10 megabytes of storage space or something. So, you know, I would be getting even then a lot of emails, not as much as I do today when I get 2,000 or more a week. But you know, I didn't save it, and in retrospect, I could probably do an excellent essay detailing just the utter psychosis of someone like Grumman. And it's important because bad artists and non-artists like Grumman are what I call Joeys. This is from the Woody Allen film Interior, where there's a character played by Mary Beth Hurt called Joey, who has all the feelings and longings of being an artist, but none of the talent. And Bob Grumman was a Joey, but he was more than just a Joey who was suffering because he had these deep feelings. He actually had mental delusions that he was an artist, and his stuff was terrible. And he couldn't come to grips with all of this. And so that's why he developed these, you know, mathematics, which say nothing. And even in their mathematical forms, have the most trite ideas. A reader of mine from my E-list once said something like, you know, for all of his stuff with the mathematics, it takes about 3 seconds to understand what he's saying once you work it out. And it's got all of the intellect and depth of a second grader. And this is absolutely true. And people like Grumman, who are not real artists, who are Joeys, make it a shame for people who are outside the arts, or rather for people inside the arts, because people outside the arts will say, oh, you're just someone like Bob Grumman. If I claim I'm a great writer, that's a true claim. I can show this with with over 1,000, probably close to 1,500 great poems, with 400, 500, 600 great essays, with a couple of hundred great short stories, great criticism, great prose fiction writing, novels, and whatnot. Bob Grumman never wrote anything remotely great. You know, he was a Jackson Pollock who didn't have a Clement Greenberg behind him. You know, he was one of these people who believed in, you just say it's art and it's art. He didn't work hard at his stuff, but he was dogged in pushing the stuff that he didn't work hard at. Instead of spending his energy in the glory and the fun and the wonderful ways of language and communication and art, he instead decided to just be a hack and to push his garbage. Well, he may not have decided to be a hack. They may have been decided for him. But anyway, this is why I have written and talked about this man, and why I did the prior video. And so I just want to make it clear. I think Bob Grumman was probably a nice enough guy. He clearly had mental problems, though. There was a video that's since been taken down, was up maybe 3-4 years ago, where he was just going, screaming at the camera and trying to explain his verse. And if you look at him on camera, you can see not only was he unkempt and slovenly, that doesn't particularly matter, but he was going for the effect of, oh, I'm the wacky genius, look at me. But he wasn't a genius. He wasn't a great artist or a good artist. He wasn't even a mediocre artist. you can barely make a sentiment for him, a claim for him that he was an artist. But if you do, he was bad. He was a very bad writer. He didn't have a great nor deep mind. He was someone who was stuck in this little loop-de-loop. It's someone who he had this OCD kind of thing with art. He was stuck in this little loop-de-loop, and that was about it. So anyway, I think he was probably a nice enough guy, but as far as I know, and I wish I had some of his emails. I remember in some emails he did tell me a little bit about his personal life. From what I recall, I don't believe he was ever married, which doesn't surprise me given his mental state. But he clearly lived a miserable and lonely life, and hopefully now that's over. And but that doesn't mean because he was lonely and miserable, his work deserves to be bullshit about. He's got a Wikipedia page that's ridiculous. There are people who have looked on my Wikipedia page, and I've been harassed, and people have screwed that up. But his Wikipedia page is filled with nothing but puffery from his friends that go on and add things. And he didn't accomplish anything in his lifetime. But the more important point is his stuff. He's the perfect example of someone with no talent that just wanted to be an artist and couldn't do it. And now it's over. So thank you for the question.